On the night of August 14, 1947, as the clock struck midnight, Jawaharlal Nehru stood before the Constituent Assembly in New Delhi and declared that India had made a tryst with destiny. After nearly 2 centuries of British colonial rule, the subcontinent was finally free. But freedom came with a wound so deep that it has never fully healed. The British did not simply leave India. They divided it, carving the subcontinent into 2 nations along religious lines, India for the Hindus and Pakistan for the Muslims. The boundary was drawn by a British lawyer named Cyril Radcliffe, who had never been to India before and was given just 5 weeks to divide a land of 400 million people. The roots of partition stretched back decades. As the independence movement grew under Mahatma Gandhi and the Indian National Congress, the Muslim League under Muhammad Ali Jinnah argued that Muslims would be a permanent minority in a Hindu-dominated India and demanded a separate homeland. The British, who had long exploited Hindu-Muslim tensions through their divide-and-rule policy, were exhausted by the Second World War and desperate to leave. Lord Mountbatten, the last viceroy, accelerated the timetable for independence by 10 months, leaving almost no time for an orderly transition. Radcliffe drew his line using outdated census data and maps, dividing Punjab in the west and Bengal in the east, cutting through villages, farms, and communities that had coexisted for centuries. When the boundary was announced on August 17, 2 days after independence, chaos erupted. Millions of people found themselves on the wrong side of the border. Hindus and Sikhs in the newly created Pakistan and Muslims in India began to flee toward the country where their religion was the majority. What followed was the largest mass migration in human history. An estimated 15 million people uprooted their lives and moved across the new borders, carrying whatever they could on their backs, in ox carts, and on overcrowded trains. The roads became rivers of humanity, stretching to the horizon. The migration was accompanied by violence of almost unimaginable brutality. Organized mobs attacked refugee columns on both sides of the border. Entire trains arrived at their destinations filled with nothing but corpses, the passengers massacred en route. In Punjab, where the violence was worst, Sikh, Hindu, and Muslim neighbors who had lived together for generations turned on each other with swords, spears, and fire. Women were abducted by the thousands, and many killed themselves or were killed by their own families to prevent capture. Villages were burned to the ground, and wells were poisoned to deny water to refugees. The death toll remains disputed and may never be known with precision. Estimates range from 200,000 to 2 million people killed in the violence of partition. Gandhi, who had devoted his life to Hindu-Muslim unity and called partition the vivisection of India, was heartbroken. He spent the weeks after independence walking through the riot-torn streets of Calcutta and Delhi, fasting and pleading for peace. His presence calmed some areas, but the hatred ran too deep and too wide for any one man to contain. On January 30, 1948, just 5 months after independence, Gandhi was assassinated by a Hindu nationalist who blamed him for being too sympathetic to Muslims. The scars of partition defined the new nations for generations. India and Pakistan fought their first war over Kashmir within months of independence, and the disputed territory remains a flashpoint to this day. Millions of refugees on both sides lived in camps for years, some for decades, and the trauma of displacement and loss was passed down through families like an inheritance. In Bengal, the division created East Pakistan, separated from West Pakistan by 1,000 miles of Indian territory, an arrangement so untenable that it led to another war and the birth of Bangladesh in 1971. The midnight that brought freedom also brought a catastrophe that scarred the soul of the subcontinent. The boundary Radcliffe drew in 5 weeks with a pencil and a map divided families, destroyed communities, and unleashed a wave of violence that haunts the collective memory of India, Pakistan, and Bangladesh to this day. Every August, as both nations celebrate their independence, the survivors and their descendants also remember what was lost: the undivided land, the neighbors who became enemies, and the millions who never reached the other side of the line.